Hello everyone, and let's check out the fifth game of Morphy against Adolf Anderssen. This is the fifth official chess game between these two players. And this game was played in December 23. This game was played on the same day after the previous game. The previous game was also played in December 23 on the same day. And Paul Morphy is leading with 1 extra point. Paul Morphy is 2.5 points. Anderssen is 1.5 points. And this time Paul Morphy is playing with the white pieces. Adolf Anderssen has the black pieces. So let's quickly check out the fifth official chess game between these two players. Paul Morphy starts the game with playing e4. And Anderssen played d5, the Scandinavian defense. A surprising move by Anderssen. He's trying to confuse Paul Morphy. So Morphy captures the pawn, e takes on d5, knight to f6, d4, knight takes on d5, c4, attacking the knight, knight to f6, knight to c3, bishop to f5, knight to f3, e6, bishop to e3, bishop to b4, pinning the knight, queen to b3, bishop takes, b takes on c3, and Adolf Anderssen played bishop to e4, knight to d2, attacking the bishop, bishop to c6, and Morphy played bishop to d3. Morphy says, you can capture my pawn on g2, but Anderssen didn't capture the pawn, and he played knight from b to d7. So of course after bishop to d3, if bishop takes on g2, then rook to g1. So bishop goes back, rook takes on g7, and white is better. This is why Anderssen didn't capture the pawn, and he played knight from b to d7, queen to c2, h6, and both players castled, rook from a to e1, b6, h3, queen to c8, king to h2, king to h8, rook to g1, rook to g8, g4, g5, and Paul Morphy played f4, queen to f8. Well, Paul Morphy wants to open some files and then create a weak position for the king. So after this move, Morphy played rook to g3, rook to d8, knight to f3, and bishop takes knight, rook takes bishop, queen to d6, king to g2, unpinning the pawn, knight to h5 by Anderssen. It looks like this move was an over-aggressive move by Anderssen. Well, Anderssen is also known as a very aggressive player. In one of his famous quotes, Anderssen said, "Attack, attack, always attack." These are the words of Adolf Anderssen, so Anderssen is sacrificing the knight. But these kinds of aggressive sacrificial attacking moves will only work to a player who can't defend very accurately. So Paul Morphy is known as a very accurate chess player, one of the most accurate chess players in the history of chess. So maybe playing these kinds of very sacrificial moves against Paul Morphy is not a good idea. Maybe it's very risky. Anyway, so after knight to h5, Morphy chops the pawn, f takes on g5. And still Paul Morphy is attacking the knight. Well, if g takes on h5, then g takes on f4, that's check, also attacking the bishop. King to somewhere else, and f takes on e3. So that was the idea of Adolf Anderssen. But Paul Morphy didn't capture the knight. He played f takes on g5, and Anderssen is in trouble, believe it or not. Anderssen played h takes on g5. Well, after f takes on g5, if let's say knight to g7, then rook takes on f7 and black is in trouble. Black has this terrible position. How to defend? Look at this position. And according to the computer chess engine, black is losing very badly. So knight to h5 was not a good idea against Paul Morphy. Maybe it would work on a normal chess player, but not against Paul Morphy. So f takes on g5, h takes on g5, and then Paul Morphy captures the knight. G takes on h5. Morphy is a piece up. in a very critical position of the game. Anderssen is in trouble. g4 attacking the rook. H takes on g4, rook takes on g4. King to f1 by Morphy. f5. Queen to f2. Knight to e5 by Anderssen. Another Mikhail Tal type move by Adolf Anderssen, sacrificing the knight. A beautiful looking move by Anderssen. It's fun to watch. So Morphy captures the knight, but Anderssen captures the bishop. Queen takes on d3, that's check. Queen to e2, so it was only a temporary sacrifice of the knight. Morphy is blocking with the queen, and still Paul Morphy is a piece up. Of course, Anderssen didn't capture the queen, and he played queen to e4. Bishop to f2. Again, not exchanging the queens. Queen to c6. Rook to d1. And exchanging the rooks. Queen takes on d1. What else? But then Anderssen captures on c4 with the queen. Check. Queen to d3. Blocking. But Anderssen also captured on a2. And slowly Anderssen is getting back the material. So Anderssen has two extra pawns. So in these kinds of positions, if white can't defend accurately, black always has some chances. So after queen takes on a2, rook to g3, and Morphy wants to simplify the game. Queen to c4, exchanging the queens, and we have this interesting endgame. Rook to g6 by Morphy, rook to c6, c4, a5, and Anderssen has this dangerous passed pawn on a5, king to e2, and rook takes on c4. Paul Morphy also captured the pawn on e6, but Anderssen created three connected passed pawns. It doesn't look very good, but of course Paul Morphy has the bishop, so in terms of material, white is better, of course. Rook to c2, check, king to f3, a4, marching the pawn, rook to g6, and also Paul Morphy created his own passed pawn. Rook to c4, rook to g1, a3, e6 by Paul Morphy, a2, rook to a1, defending, rook to e4. Anderssen is attacking the dangerous passed pawn of Paul Morphy. Paul Morphy captures on a2 and Anderssen captures on e6, king to f4. And this move, believe it or not, this quiet, very passive looking move was actually the killer move. And how to defend this pawn, this very critical, important pawn? Well, there is no way. That's why Anderssen played rook to d6, a pathetic move. Well, if rook to f6, then bishop to d4. This is pinning the rook and winning the game. Bishop takes on f6, black needs to resign. So this is why we have rook to d6 and Paul Morphy chops the pawn on f5. Rook to d5, that's check, king to g4, d5. Rook to a8, that's check, king to h7, rook to a7. Another killer move by Paul Morphy. As you can see, playing over-aggressive against Paul Morphy was not a good idea. So right now, Anderssen is suffering. And how to defend the pawn? The pawn is pinned. Only defense. So if defending with the rook on c5, if rook to c5, bishop takes rook. So in this position, Anderssen played rook to d7. What else? But here comes bishop to g3 by Paul Morphy. So the pawn is pinned. You can't push the pawn. Otherwise, rook takes rook. That's why Anderssen played rook to g7, check, king to h4, and now what? Well, after this move, Adolf Anderssen played rook to f7, a funny move. So after rook to f7, Paul Morphy, of course, captures the pawn with the rook. Rook takes on c7, and Anderssen resigned. So this is the last position of the game, and Anderssen resigned. After rook takes on c7, the rook is pinned, and black is also losing the rook, and white has the bishop. And this endgame is losing for black. That's why Anderssen resigned, and Paul Morphy is leading with 2 extra points. Paul Morphy is 3.5 points. Anderssen is 1.5 points. Only 4 more wins left for Paul Morphy. So after 4 more wins later, Paul Morphy is going to reach the 7th winning point, and he is going to be victorious. So after move 54, Anderssen resigned. And let me show you the possible continuation. And what else if rook takes on c7, bishop takes on c7. So let me show you the possible moves very quickly. And there is no drawing chances for black. And dark square bishop is easily defending the b pawn. Bishop takes on b2, king to g8, king to f6. And let me show you the other moves. So after king to h7, king to f7, and black has to play a move. King to h8, king to g6, king to g8, h7. So if king to f8, h-pawn promotes to a queen. That's checkmate. If king to h8, then bishop to f6. This is also checkmate. There is no defense for Anderssen. This is why, at move 54, after Paul Morphy captured the pawn with the rook takes on c7, Adolf Anderssen resigned on the spot, because as you can see, there is no logical defense for black, and whatever black does, black is losing the game. Another very beautiful chess game, very accurate chess game by Paul Morphy against one of the strongest players of the time, Adolf Anderssen. So I hope you have enjoyed watching this video, and I hope to see you next time. Take care and bye bye.